After a torrid couple of weeks in the news, including a blistering book depicting him as a sex-crazed buffoon, Prince Andrew has finally got the hump with Speed Bump.
Behind the heavy gates of royal power and silence, things rarely stay calm for long, and tensions always find a way to slip through the cracks in dramatic fashion. But this time, the quiet countryside chatter has exploded into something far bigger, pulling attention straight back into royal controversy. Inside reports claim Prince Andrew allegedly snapped in anger over a crumbling farmhouse linked to his estate, and what should have been a simple property issue quickly turned into a full-blown moment of frustration that stunned staff on site. Insiders suggest the reaction wasn't just mild annoyance, it carried a much sharper edge than expected, leaving witnesses unsettled. So the real question hanging in the air is whether this was just about an old building falling apart, or something deeper boiling under the surface of royal tensions. Once known for royal comfort and public prestige, Prince Andrew's story has shifted into something far more complicated and talked about across the UK and beyond. For years, he stood among the most recognised faces of the British royal family, carrying both attention and expectation wherever he went. Born as the second son of Queen Elizabeth II, Andrew was raised in a world wrapped in tradition, discipline, and constant public observation that shaped every part of his life from the very beginning. His position placed him close to the core of royal authority, where every appearance mattered and every role carried weight. In his earlier years, Andrew often appeared confident in his royal identity, moving through ceremonies and events with the kind of presence expected from someone inside the monarchy's inner circle. The public regularly saw him at official gatherings, representing royal duties with formality and structure. A major turning point in his early image came from his service in the Royal Navy, where he took part in the Falklands War in 1982. An experience that added a layer of respect and discipline to his public reputation. That military background shaped how many people viewed him as someone tested in real conflict and responsibility. After his naval service, Andrew remained highly visible in public life, travelling internationally and representing Britain at various events across the world stage. He continued taking on royal engagements that kept him connected to diplomatic and ceremonial duties, reinforcing his place within the institution. During that period, he was seen as firmly established within the monarchy's structure, with influence and responsibility that suggested a long-standing role in royal affairs. Many observers believed his position would remain stable for years, given his royal status and global exposure. But over time, that steady image began to shift in a way few expected, as controversy and public criticism slowly changed the narrative surrounding him. Instead of consistent royal appearances, his presence became more limited, and the tone around him grew noticeably more cautious. Public perception started to shift dramatically, and the once familiar image of a confident royal figure began fading into something more distant and uncertain. Events that once placed him at the centre of attention became rare, and his visibility within royal life gradually declined. One moment that symbolised this change came during a quiet visit to a farmhouse located on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, a place long associated with royal tradition and private retreats. What seemed like a simple inspection quickly gained attention because of what it represented beyond the surface. The estate itself has always been tied closely to the royal family, often used as a peaceful winter retreat away from public pressure and formal duties. So Andrew's presence there immediately carried symbolic weight, especially given how much his role within the monarchy had changed. What made the visit stand out even more was the contrast it created, because instead of grand royal events or global appearances, he was now inspecting a modest countryside property in a quiet rural setting. The shift felt sharp, almost like a visual reminder of how much his circumstances had changed. That farmhouse, simple and weathered, almost felt like a mirror of his current position within royal life, still connected to the institution, but far removed from its centre of power and attention. Observers quickly read meaning into the visit, seeing it as more than just routine estate work. The trip raised a lot of questions, especially around timing and purpose. as people began asking how Andrew might have felt stepping into such a different kind of royal environment. Was it comfort, frustration, or something in between that shaped his reaction? Reports later suggested that Prince Andrew travelled quietly to Norfolk to inspect the property known as Marsh Farm, located not far from Sandringham House, but tucked away in a far more secluded area. The journey itself was described as low profile, without the grand style often associated with royal movements. The farmhouse had reportedly been empty for some time before plans emerged for renovation and possible occupation, leaving it in a state of visible decline. Without regular maintenance, the property began to show signs of wear, from fading surfaces to structural weakness. As preparations for his possible move began, contractors arrived, and work intensified quickly, transforming the quiet building into an active construction zone full of noise, movement, and planning. Security fencing was installed early, marking the beginning of a controlled and protected environment. Workers repaired damaged structures, restored key parts of the building, and reinforced areas that had weakened over time, turning attention to both safety and livability. At the same time, modern upgrades were added, including improved communication systems designed to bring the remote home into a more connected standard. Outside, landscaping teams reshaped the grounds with trimmed bushes, cleared paths, and renewed planting efforts that slowly changed the atmosphere of the property. What once looked abandoned began to resemble a functioning residence again, alive with constant activity and coordination. Locals reportedly noticed the sudden transformation, with construction vehicles arriving regularly and staff moving in and out of the site throughout the day. The quiet farmland environment had turned into a busy working zone filled with progress and supervision. As the renovation continued, the property slowly evolved into something closer to a secure countryside residence designed for private living. Every change seemed aimed at balancing comfort with protection, privacy with control, and isolation with functionality. Eventually, Prince Andrew arrived to view the progress himself, reportedly taking time to walk through the grounds and observe the changes in detail. His inspection included both exterior views and interior walkthroughs, where he examined room layouts and overall structure. During the visit, he also spoke with workers and supervisors involved in the project, discussing practical elements like security systems, interior arrangements, and how the space would function once occupied. These conversations reflected typical pre-move adjustments, similar to final checks before settling in. Despite all the renovation effort, reports suggest his reaction was not fully satisfied, with some describing visible frustration as he moved through the property. Others noted he appeared uneasy at moments, reacting strongly to certain aspects of the build. One particularly dramatic account even described his response as close to a tantrum, though such language is often amplified in media coverage involving royal figures. Still, across multiple versions of the story, one point remains consistent: the farmhouse did not meet his expectations. Whether the issue came from design choices, room scale, or simply the shift toward a quieter lifestyle away from grand royal settings remains unclear. What is clear, however, is that the inspection left him far from impressed, closing the visit on a note of visible dissatisfaction rather than approval. Shifting away from the farmhouse situation, the contrast becomes even sharper when you look at what Prince Andrew is believed to be leaving behind, and that difference hits hard in every direction. The new property may have upgrades and security, but it still stands in the shadow of what came before. To understand why the Marsh Farm move feels so underwhelming to him, you have to step back and look at Royal Lodge, the long-time residence that defined his everyday life for more than 20 years. This isn't just any home. It's a major royal estate sitting inside Windsor Great Park. Royal Lodge carries weight, history, and presence all at once, surrounded by wide-open greenery, towering old trees, and a calm landscape that feels almost frozen in time. The estate itself stretches across impressive grounds, with the kind of space that instantly signals status and importance. Inside, the property is believed to contain around 30 rooms, giving it the scale of a full royal compound rather than a simple residence. Everything about it reflects tradition and long-standing royal structure, from its layout to its location deep within royal land. Living there also meant something beyond comfort. It meant proximity to power. Just a short distance away stands Windsor Castle, one of the most iconic royal buildings in the world, constantly tied to ceremonies, meetings, and official royal duties. Because of that location, Andrew was never far from the heartbeat of royal life. Events, gatherings, and formal traditions regularly unfold in the Windsor area, and living at Royal Lodge placed him right inside that rhythm of activity. That closeness also carried symbolic meaning. In royal circles, where you live often reflects where you stand. Royal Lodge, with its size and setting, signaled seniority, privilege, and a strong position within the wider royal framework. For years, Andrew's residence reinforced the image of someone firmly embedded in the royal system, someone still connected to its core structure, even when not directly on the throne line. It wasn't just a home, it was a statement of status. The lifestyle inside such a property is difficult for most people to imagine, but it comes down to scale and space that stretches far beyond ordinary living. Long corridors, large rooms, and wide landscapes created an environment built for both privacy and prestige. Everyday life there likely blended personal moments with the feeling of being inside a historic institution. Over time, that kind of environment doesn't just become familiar, it becomes part of a person's identity. That's what makes leaving it so emotionally heavy. After 2 decades in one place, Royal Lodge stops being just a residence and starts becoming a personal landmark. Memories, routines, and life events become tied to its walls, making any departure feel like more than just a move. And that's where the real weight of the situation begins to show. Because leaving Royal Lodge isn't simply packing boxes and relocating, it represents a shift away from a long-standing chapter of royal proximity and influence. Compared to that, a countryside farmhouse feels like a completely different world. The difference in size, atmosphere, and symbolism is massive, almost like stepping from a royal exhibition hall into a quiet rural shelter. Where Royal Lodge offers grandeur and historical presence, Marsh Farm offers simplicity and isolation. That contrast alone can reshape how a person feels about their surroundings, especially someone used to royal-scale living. Even the idea of stepping away from such a residence signals change within the monarchy's broader story. It reflects how positions can shift over time, even for those once deeply embedded in royal life. Homes in royal settings aren't just buildings. They're symbols of rank and role. So when someone moves from a place like Royal Lodge, it naturally draws attention far beyond the physical relocation itself. Now shifting focus to Marsh Farm, the contrast becomes even more visible. This property sits quietly in the Norfolk countryside, not far from Sandringham House, but far removed from its grandeur and formal atmosphere. Unlike the structured and historic feel of Royal Lodge, Marsh Farm has long been described as a rural, low-profile property that blended into the surrounding farmland without drawing attention. Even after renovations began, it still cannot compete with the scale or prestige of a royal estate. It remains a much smaller residence, designed more for practical living than ceremonial importance. Plans suggest the home will contain around 5 bedrooms, which is comfortable, but still significantly smaller than the expansive 30-room structure of Royal Lodge. That difference alone highlights the scale of adjustment involved. Renovation work has focused heavily on functionality and safety rather than luxury expansion. Security improvements, reinforced boundaries, and updated communication systems have all been installed to modernize the space. These upgrades make the property more secure, but they don't change its overall identity. At its core, Marsh Farm is still a farmhouse shaped by rural design and countryside simplicity. During the renovation phase, some observers offered blunt descriptions of the property. One journalist reportedly called it ramshackle, a word often used for buildings that appear worn, aged, or in need of repair. That description wasn't necessarily meant as harsh criticism, but it did highlight the condition of the property before restoration began. Older countryside homes often carry that kind of weathered character. Another term used was pokey, referring to small or cramped interior spaces. Compared to the wide rooms of Royal Lodge, even a modest farmhouse layout would naturally feel tighter and more compact. Adding to the curiosity around the renovation, pest control vehicles were reportedly seen on site. This sparked speculation that small animals or insects may have settled inside during the years the building stood empty. That kind of situation is not unusual for rural properties left unused for long periods. Nature tends to reclaim quiet spaces, especially in open countryside environments. There were also mentions of possible flooding concerns in the surrounding area. Low-lying rural land can sometimes experience water buildup during heavy rainfall, making drainage an important part of renovation planning. Experts in property restoration, however, note that none of these challenges are unusual. Older homes almost always require structural repairs, pest management, and environmental adjustments before they can be safely lived in. What makes this situation stand out is not the renovation itself, but the contrast it creates. The shift from a grand royal estate to a modest countryside home changes how the move is perceived. It becomes less about property and more about symbolism. A transition like this naturally draws public attention because it reflects a visible change in lifestyle and position. To many observers, it feels like a step down in scale, even if the property is being upgraded for comfort and security. That perception is what fuels much of the discussion around Marsh Farm. In the end, the story is not just about buildings or renovation work. It's about what those spaces represent in terms of identity, history, and personal change. And that is why the relocation question continues to circulate. Is this simply a practical move, or does it reflect a deeper retreat from royal visibility and influence? What remains clear is that the shift from Royal Lodge to Marsh Farm carries meaning far beyond architecture. It represents a change in lifestyle, status, and public perception that people cannot ignore. Stepping further into this unfolding royal situation, the picture becomes even more layered as Prince Andrew's life continues shifting away from the spotlight in a slow, steady, and unmistakable retreat from public prominence. What once looked like a fixed position inside the monarchy now feels like a gradual fade into quieter and more controlled surroundings. In recent years, Andrew's role within the British royal family has changed so dramatically that it almost feels like a completely different version of his life is being written in real time. A man who once stood firmly at the centre of royal duty now finds himself living far away from the energy of public royal appearances. There was a time when he was one of the most visible figures in the entire royal institution, constantly appearing at ceremonies, official events, and international engagements that kept him closely tied to the public eye. As a senior royal, his responsibilities stretched across both domestic duties in Britain and formal representation abroad. He held honorary military titles, supported charitable organizations, and carried out duties that required him to represent the crown with consistency and visibility. These roles weren't occasional appearances, they were a constant rhythm that defined the structure of his everyday life for many years. Senior royals are expected to maintain presence, attend events, and reinforce the image of the monarchy, and Andrew followed that pattern for a long stretch of time. His schedule regularly placed him alongside other senior members of the royal family, reinforcing his role within the institution. But everything began to shift after the controversy surrounding his connection to Jeffrey Epstein emerged into global attention. As Epstein's criminal activities became widely reported and discussed, scrutiny quickly extended to individuals linked to him, including Andrew. Although he has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, the association alone triggered intense media coverage, public criticism, and growing pressure on the royal family to respond. Headlines became relentless, and the situation developed into one of the most sensitive challenges faced by the monarchy in recent years. Because the monarchy depends heavily on trust and public perception, the pressure mounted quickly and created a serious institutional problem. Charities began reconsidering their partnerships, public criticism intensified, and questions about accountability grew louder across the media. Eventually, Buckingham Palace made the decision for Andrew to step back from official royal duties. This announcement marked a major turning point, effectively removing him from the active responsibilities that had defined most of his adult life. His honorary military titles were returned, and many of his patronages were reassigned to other members of the royal family. These decisions marked the clear end of his role as a working senior royal in the traditional sense of the term. For someone who once lived a life filled with constant ceremonies, travel, and public representation, the change was extremely significant. The public-facing structure that once surrounded him began to disappear, leaving behind a much quieter and more isolated existence. Now his daily life is shaped by privacy and distance from royal duty, rather than visibility and engagement. This transition is reflected clearly in his relocation away from Windsor and London toward the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. Sandringham has long been associated with private royal life, offering a retreat from the intensity of public attention. Within this estate, Marsh Farm is expected to become his future residence, positioned in a rural and secluded environment far removed from royal activity hubs. Before Marsh Farm is fully ready, Andrew is expected to stay temporarily at Wood Farm, a modest cottage within the same estate. This property holds historical significance, having previously been used by Prince Philip during his later years after stepping back from public duties. Wood Farm is simple and understated compared to royal palaces, designed for privacy, quiet living, and distance from ceremony. Its environment reinforces the idea that Andrew's current phase is far removed from the structured world of public royal life. This temporary arrangement highlights a deeper shift, not just in location, but in lifestyle and identity. The contrast between his former role and his present situation becomes more visible with each passing stage of this transition. Now attention turns to how the public has responded to these changes and the sanctions placed upon Andrew by the monarchy. Over recent years, public opinion has increasingly supported reducing his royal status and distancing him from official recognition. Multiple surveys suggest that a large majority of the British public supports removing him from the line of succession and stripping key titles. One widely reported poll shows strong backing for these actions, reflecting a clear shift in public sentiment. Support reportedly includes around 80% of respondents favouring the removal of his Duke of York title, with similarly high figures supporting the stripping of other royal designations. These numbers indicate widespread public desire to reduce his formal standing within the monarchy. However, opinions are more divided when it comes to his military service. His South Atlantic Medal, awarded for his role during the 1982 Falklands War, remains a sensitive subject because it is tied directly to his service as a Royal Navy helicopter co-pilot in active conflict. Some members of the public believe that this recognition should remain intact due to his wartime contribution, while others argue that all honours should be treated equally. This division highlights a more complex layer beneath the overall criticism. Public reaction also reflects broader dissatisfaction with how the royal family initially handled the Epstein-related controversy. Many respondents believe the institution reacted too slowly, allowing the situation to escalate before taking firm action. There is also a view that senior royals should have spoken out earlier and more clearly to distance themselves from Andrew. This adds further pressure to how the monarchy is judged in terms of accountability and response time. The discussion even extends to his daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. While they are not directly involved in the controversy, public opinion suggests that some believe maintaining distance would be appropriate given the circumstances. King Charles III also remains central to public discussion as he navigates the difficult balance between family ties and institutional responsibility. Many people recognize the complexity of his position as monarch during such a sensitive issue. Polls show mixed views on his handling of the situation, with some believing he has acted appropriately to protect the monarchy, while others feel stronger and faster action could have been taken earlier. Overall, public sentiment clearly shows a strong shift toward distancing Andrew from royal life, although a small level of nuance remains regarding his past military service. This creates a picture of criticism mixed with selective acknowledgement. As the story continues, attention turns to what this relocation actually means for Andrew's future. Moving house is never just a physical process, especially when it involves someone with such a long history inside the royal system. For many years, Andrew lived at Royal Lodge alongside his former wife, Sarah Ferguson, even after their marriage officially ended in 1996. This arrangement remained unusual, yet it continued for decades and became part of their shared lifestyle. Instead of fully separating after divorce, they maintained a cooperative relationship focused on family stability and support for their daughters. Over time, Royal Lodge became a central anchor point in their unusual post-divorce arrangement. Now that Andrew is leaving, questions naturally arise about what this means for Ferguson's future living situation. Whether she remains connected to the estate or moves elsewhere is still unclear, and speculation continues to circulate. At the same time, there is ongoing discussion about Andrew's potential future beyond the United Kingdom. Some observers suggest that his move may not be the final stage, but part of a broader transition in lifestyle and residence. Among the locations mentioned in speculation is Bahrain, where Andrew has reportedly developed connections over the years through diplomatic, business, and social relationships. These ties have fueled discussion about possible time spent abroad. Although nothing has been confirmed, these ideas continue to appear in media commentary and royal discussions. For now, they remain speculation rather than established plans for the future. If such a move were ever to happen, Marsh Farm might serve only as a temporary stop rather than a permanent home. It could function as a transitional space while larger life decisions are considered. What remains clear is the dramatic contrast between Royal Lodge and Marsh Farm. One represents tradition, prestige, and royal history, while the other reflects simplicity, rural living, and reduced visibility. This shift highlights not only a change in residence but also a transformation in public role and perception. The reduction in space, influence, and attention mirrors the broader change in his position within the monarchy. Now, the key question becomes how Andrew will adapt to this new reality. Some believe he may embrace the quieter lifestyle, while others think adjustment may prove difficult after decades in public royal life. Only time will reveal the direction he ultimately takes. What is certain is that this relocation marks a turning point that cannot be ignored. And now, as this chapter closes and another quietly begins at Marsh Farm, the story continues to unfold under public attention and scrutiny. So what do you think about Andrew's reaction to the farmhouse situation? Do you believe he will eventually change his ways for the better? Or is this just another chapter in a long-standing pattern? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more updates.